A little birdie asked me to ask you a quick little question. What do a hornet, bat, pterosaur, and pigeon all have in common? If you guessed that they had wings, you'd only be partially correct. The correct answer is that all these animals develop the ability to fly while being from completely unrelated species. This phenomenon is known as convergent evolution. Convergent evolution is when unrelated species independently evolve similar traits or attributes, often because of the similar environments they live in or the fact that they face similar challenges. Let's fly back, around 350 million years ago, in the Carboniferous period, where the earliest adaptations of flight have been discovered. What was the first animal that flew, you might ask? Well, that'd be this little guy. This mayfly-like creature goes by the astute title of Delishaza bitterfeldensis. And no, he's not just a fossilized dragonfly. He's the oldest life form we know of that exhibited the ability to fly. Discovered in 1996 by German entomologists Karsten Brackmann and George Schneider, this bite-sized bug had a wingspan of just 2 centimeters, with noticeable patterns on its wings that allowed it to camouflage itself from amphibians prevalent during this period. Now, before we go on, let's establish what makes being able to fly away from your problems is a very useful advantage to have. It also helps that flight allows for significant coverage of distance, allowing you to easily migrate out of poor conditions over oceans and over land. If you think about it, flight is essentially a superpower that lets you turn into a plane for free. With all the extra survivability that flight gives, also comes a better chance to reproduce and keep your species alive. Now it's time to address the elephant, or in this case, the dinosaur in the room. There's one type of aviation animal that didn't quite make it to this stage despite all the success it was set up for. You might have already guessed it, the pterosaurs. The pterosaur is a term used to classify the natural group of extinct flying reptiles that existed mostly during the Mesozoic period, around 230 to 70 million years ago. A common misconception made is that birds evolved from pterosaurs. However, this isn't the case. Archosaurs were the common ancestor of both the early birds and pterosaurs, from which they convergently evolved to gain wings. If they share a common ancestor, how are they different? Well, although they boast the same function, the wings between pterosaurs and birds are noticeably different. Wings of pterosaurs are held up by one outstretched finger with a membrane consisting of muscle fibers and veins stretching down to their tails. Birds instead have an entire forearm that supports their wing structure with individually attached feathers that provides the bird with insulation. This is also in conjunction with the fact that pterosaurs were large, the biggest pterosaur being the Quetzalcoatluses, usually having wingspans of around 35 feet. These flying reptiles could be better identified as planes in comparison to any modern-day bird. This further proves the point. If pterosaurs were just massive birds, how and why did they go extinct, leaving us with the present-day birds? Well, with great power comes great responsibility, or as Uncle Pterosaurus Ben may say, with great size comes great responsibility. Because when it came to pterosaurs, they were quickly driven to starvation with the Cretaceous-Paleogene mass extinction, which wiped out most of their prey. The fallout from this crash also blocked out the sun, resulting in pseudo-winters for years, a condition that was anything but suitable for these cold-blooded pterosaurs. Meanwhile, birds were able to thrive in this new environment, as their omnivorous diet was more adaptable to the scarce landscape. The extinction also led to less competition, since all the dinosaurs were being wiped out. With that, we're left with our present-day birds. Eagles, hawks, swans, all types of birds that fly and do bird things, but among the bird species, some still choose to lose their wings in response to their surroundings. The ostrich, a species of birds native to sub-Saharan Africa, is the definition of fight over flight. They traded off their wings to gain literally everything else, which is a pretty good deal, because these aviation graduates weigh anywhere from 60 to 150 kilograms, have a top speed of 43.5 miles per hour, and a kick with pressure of 2,000 psi, which is enough pressure to easily crush a small car. Although these superpowers tend to anger other species. For example, a different species, emus, flightless birds native to Australia, who are very closely related to and similar to ostriches, found themselves to be at war with the Royal Austrian Artillery. In November of 1932, farmers found their crops being overrun by migrating emus, and their complaints initiated the Minister of Defense, Sir George Pearce, and ex-soldiers from World War I to start a culling of the giant birds with machine guns. The expedition ultimately resulted in the win for emus because in the 1-month period, which is now known as the Great Emu War, the efforts of the soldiers were insignificant due to their sheer inefficiency in dispatching these cretin dodos. The loss of wings isn't just a thing that happens to birds, but it can also be witnessed in bugs as well. For example, modern-day ants had winged wasps for ancestors, but over time, they lost their ability to fly, alongside their wings. More specifically, the worker ants have regressed to not develop wings. The worker ants' inability to fly is attributed to the fact that they often have to forage for items many times their body weight. And with flying being a very energy-intensive maneuver, worker ants opt to live on the land as to not drain up all the colony's resources. Essentially, evolution said to the ants, "No wings, but you can deadlift 50 times your weight." And ants were like, "Bet." And that is the wild, feathered, and occasionally jacked story of how flight came to be, and in some cases, just pieced out completely. Flight isn't just a cool party trick, it's a survival strategy, a legacy of millions of years of experimentation, and whether it's the elegance of a swan, the menace of an emu, or the tactical ant lifters of the underground, evolution always finds a way. So the next time you see a bird, a bug, or a buff ant, just remember, wings are temporary, but the hustle is forever.
Thank you.